Hello and good day. Today is Monday, the uh, 9th of June, and we are in Workplace Wizards podcast, episode number 13, Seeing Self Awareness in Action. And this is brought to you by Small World Solutions. It's a consulting firm that provides highly interactive presentations to help improve your workplace environment. We specialize in that management of conflict. So these episodes will give you a little bit of insight on how you can do that, dealing with emotional intelligence, and sometimes we're going to talk about our behavior styles, our human behavior styles, and things like that. So we have our guest on today is Gavin Wong from Great Britain, and we're going to talk today about seeing self awareness in action. Gavin, we spoke a little bit beforehand, and we talked about how do we see self awareness in action.
Yeah, we did, and I think it's quite an interesting one too, in terms of that emotional intelligence and about, are we respond to things emotionally or logically? And one of the good questions you need to ask yourself is that, do I want to be feeling the way I'm feeling? But if
Hmm.
you're not, if you know that if you're not feeling the way you're feeling, it's an emotional response. So that's a good trigger, really. But I know that you've got a good example in terms of driving and road rage, because this made me think the other day when um, someone did something very innocuous in a car, and I hate to say it, but I was cussing them, as you say over there, and
What kind of curse words were you using, Gavin?
I can't, like, I can't say, but I was cussing, and I said to myself, look, do you want to be feeling this way? And I was like, I know I'm being emotional, but yes, I do want to be feeling this way because it was cathartic to get out of my system. It didn't affect anybody, and I think that was the key here. That it wasn't affecting anybody. The person had driven off, and I just wanted to vent. And sometimes that's okay, I think, if it's not affecting other people. But certainly, it can really affect people and how you lead, in particular, if you allow that emotion to dictate how you are with other people. But I know you've got quite a good example in terms of
Exactly, Gavin.
probably road rage again.
I want to go back to your story of the road rage, and early in one of our earlier episodes, we talked about some road rage, and we know that the action is only 10% of the circumstance. It's only
Mm.
10%. The action that happened is only 10%, but the 90% is how we react to it. I was driving down the road the other day when I saw a car and they did something, but on the back of their car they had a bumper sticker and it said WWJD. Now, I know what that means because I'm in church, and we have that sticker in church, and it stands for what would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? So in your circumstance, when you were cut off by the person or whatever that person did in his car, and you had that moment of rage at first, and you asked yourself, "Do I want to be feeling this way?" It's almost the exact same thing as stopping to think, "What would Jesus do?" Now, I
Hmm.
know there's a lot of people out there that are probably not into the Christian faith, and they have no faith in Jesus, or no belief in Jesus or God, or external things. However, it doesn't need to be what WWJD. It could be
Mm.
WWGW. What would Gavin
Mm.
Wong do? Because you just have to have a somebody who's a uh, somebody you look up to, somebody
Mm.
you value their insights. If somebody you go to for, hey, I'm having this little bit of trouble, can you help me out with this? And if that's the kind of person you look up to, a mentor, or somebody you respect, what would they do?
Mm.
Because it doesn't necessarily have to be what would Jesus do, even though Jesus, according to the Bible, never ever made a bad choice. So that's what that bumper sticker was intending to say, is what would Jesus do? Because Jesus never made a bad choice. However,
Mm.
it doesn't need to be Jesus. What would Gavin do? Because I know I value Gavin. I value his insights. And I see that he would be somebody who would make the right choice, even though he did not in that last situation we just explained. However,
Well, I
so
don't.
if you have somebody you look up to, what would they do? Now,
Mhm.
this all goes into this all goes into stopping to think, what would
Mm.
somebody do? Because what it is that fork in the road. And my cousin L, he tells a story. Matter of fact, he's writing a book about whenever I came to the fork in the road, I always made the wrong choice. And so when we come to that fork in the road, we have four choices. You can go this way,
Mm.
you can go that way, you can
Mhm.
stop and do nothing, or you could also turn around and go back.
Mm.
But if you stop to ask your question, what would Jesus do, or WW, whoever's name you want to put in
Mm.
there, if you stop to ask that question, what are you doing? That's your self awareness kicking in for emotional
I
intelligence.
think that's a brilliant analogy, and really powerful, because I think one of the things about in the world that I train now, so I do leadership training. What I say to people is that leadership's a choice. You choose how you want to behave. There are people that are natural leaders, but they're not. You still can be better leaders. Okay, and I think that thing about, well, actually, role models is really powerful, because we push a lot in terms of, actually, who's your role model, and actually, do you want to be a role model for other people? And if that
Right.
helps you inform your choice, I think that's fantastic, because there will always be times when you're leading teams, whether it's complex or large or whatever it may be, and you've got to make a difficult decision. Well, what would someone that you really admire, what would they do? And that will help you and hopefully inform a better decision, because not only are you basing it on evidence on some levels, you're making it much more logical and it's less emotional. And I think that's a really good. I think that's a great approach. And and ultimately, as leaders, what I want people to be, their legacies, that they're role models for other people.
Right.
You know, and that people will look up to them, and then they will be the benchmark for how they act. And it's kind of that self-perpetuating kind of leadership quality.
Hmm. But the importance of that, Gavin, the importance of that is you are actually stopping to recognize that there's an
Yes,
emotional trigger.
yes,
You're stopping
absolutely.
to
Yeah,
recognize that something just stirred up my emotions, and
yes,
now I want to act one way or the
yes,
other.
yes.
Even if you curse somebody out in your head, which with Gavin, we weren't going to use his example because that's the wrong choice. But anyways, even if you,
Oh, was it
but
the wrong choice?
but what we're saying is basically you have choices
Yeah, yeah.
to be made, and we
I,
want
I think you're
everybody to
right. Yeah.
we want everybody to make the right choice, or the choice that's going to be beneficial to them in the long run. So
Mm.
that would help
But
them.
you're, but I know you're so right in terms of, if you've got to identify your triggers.
Right.
'Cause if you know when you're going to be, or you're responding emotionally, now your emotional response might be fine. Actually, the emotional responses aren't always wrong, so it might be absolutely fine. But you need to know that you're at that crossroads, and you need to be able to, or that fork in the road. You need to, something in you. If you can know that you're being emotional, that is amazing, because then your choices becomes a little bit easier. At least you can do something about it. Whether you use a role
Mm-hmm.
model or use logic, or doesn't really matter. The fact that if you don't have that, understand your triggers in yourself,
Self
you're
awareness.
it makes it very hard. Self-awareness, it makes it very hard, because there's self-awareness about, I know how emotional I am, but I need to know what makes me emotional.
Right.
And actually, when I am becoming emotional, what can I do? When can I intervene to do something about it? And that's the thing
Well,
you're talking about there, the power of that kind of, that's the trigger. And I think that's
and that
fantastic.
and that's step two, self regulating. So once you
Yes.
once you know now, oh, I've been triggered. What
Yeah.
do you do now to calm down, or to bring down the emotion, or how do you self regulate?
Yes. Yes. And we can do that in all sorts of parts of life. And I told you before we started, I had this great game of golf on, last week. The first nine was, I was blitzing it. I was Tiger Woods. And then the second half was just a disaster. And I was making poor,
Why
I
why
was
why
making
you
poor,
choose
I
to
was making
why,
poor choices.
wait, why you choose Tiger Woods? I mean, why not Rory McIlroy? Why not?
Well, I mean, Tiger's the greatest ever, isn't he? Let's face it. But I was making all these poor choices. I was being emotional. I was trying to do things I couldn't do. I wasn't listening. I wasn't even contemplating the logic of what shots I was trying to play. And but that's just choices. If I actually just slow down and just thought about what I was going to do, I could have recovered from that second half. But I got myself into such a rut. It was almost like a point of no return, just purely because I wasn't listening to myself. And I know that's a golfing analogy, but that happens in life, doesn't it?
But I was going to ask you: are you saying that everybody in the workplace environment should go out there and try to play 9 holes of golf?
Well, I was going to say it's good. It's good for the mental health sometimes, but but looking after yourself, doing any kind of activity where because you need a little bit of stress and pressure in life just to help you
Mm-hmm.
grow and deal with things like that, and so you can recuperate. Yeah, any kind of hobby, whether that's a physical one or a mental one or spiritual one, actually, as someone working, is really important because you've got to regenerate and re-energize yourself. So whatever that is, as long as the golf doesn't cause you too much stress, you know, actually
Right.
it's really powerful because you need to be able to deal with things. You need energy. Sometimes you need energy in order to be able to make those better choices.
Love
So
it,
you've
love
got
it,
that
love
kind
it.
of mental
So
well-being.
Gavin's suggestion is for all you place people that are HR executives and HR personnel, start joining the golf club and go out there and play some golf and relieve some of that stress. And don't get stressed by playing golf because you're going to have some bad days. And I think Gavin and I have had plenty of those on that golf course. But
Yeah,
anyways,
yeah.
we do have to cut this thing short, and we're going to have to move on to our next projects. So next week, make sure you do join us next week. We're going to continue our discussions and on how we can help improve workplace environments. So this is Gavin and Arnell saying goodbye. But before you go, please like us and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube under Small World Solutions, or LinkedIn under Small World Solutions, or Facebook. So join us on one of those platforms and watch our next episodes, watch all of our episodes. And if you need to reach out to us, we can be reached at smalley@smallworldsolutions.net. And also you can reach us by phone at 954. I'm sorry, I always say that. You can reach us by phone at 754-971-7007.
7.
Gavin loves that number. So until next week, we're going to say Auf Wiedersehen or goodbye.
Adios.